The sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the suburban neighborhood as I parked my car in front of my parents' house. I had planned to drop by briefly, a simple visit to say hello before heading back to my apartment. Little did I know, the events of that evening would alter the course of not just my life, but my sister's as well. Stepping inside, I was greeted by the familiar scent of freshly baked cookies and the distant hum of laughter from the living room. My younger sister, Lily, was getting married in a week, and the house was buzzing with last-minute preparations. My mom was meticulously organizing the seating chart while Dad hung fairy lights in the backyard. It was a picturesque scene of familial harmony until I wandered upstairs. I had left my jacket in Lily's room the last time I visited and figured I'd retrieve it. The door was slightly ajar, and as I approached, I heard hushed voices and muffled giggles. Curiosity piqued, I peeked through the crack. My heart plummeted to my stomach. There, tangled in an intimate embrace, were my boyfriend, Jake, and Lily. The sight of them locked in a passionate kiss made my knees buckle. I clutched the doorframe for support, my mind racing to make sense of the betrayal unfolding before me. Unable to contain my fury, I pushed the door open. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and heartbreak. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers caught sneaking out after curfew. Lily's face flushed crimson, while Jake stammered, "I can explain." "Explain?" I spat. "You're making out with my sister a week before her wedding." "Go ahead, Jake. Explain that." Lily folded her arms, adopting a defensive stance. "It's not what it looks like," she muttered, avoiding my gaze. "Really?" I countered, crossing my arms. "Because it looks exactly like my boyfriend and my sister betraying me in the most disgusting way possible." Jake stepped forward, reaching for my hand, but I recoiled as if his touch would burn me. "Please, just let me talk," he pleaded, but I was done listening. "Get out," I said, my voice cold and firm. "Both of you." They hesitated, exchanging nervous glances, but the fire in my eyes must have conveyed the seriousness of my command. Jake shuffled past me, and Lily followed, shooting me a fleeting look of regret that did little to soothe the storm raging inside me. Once they were gone, I sank onto the bed, tears streaming down my face. My mind oscillated between heartbreak and anger, my thoughts a chaotic whirlwind. How could Lily, my own flesh and blood, do this to me? And Jake, the man I thought I loved? My trust in both of them was shattered beyond repair. By the next morning, my anger had crystallized into resolve. Lily's wedding was the talk of the town, and I couldn't let her walk down the aisle with this secret looming over her. Her fiancé, Ethan, deserved to know the truth. I called him, my hands trembling as I dialed his number. He picked up on the third ring, his voice cheerful. "Hey. What's up?" "Ethan, we need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "It's about Lily." There was a pause, then a note of concern entered his tone. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath and recounted everything I had seen, my words spilling out in a rush. I braced myself for disbelief, for anger directed at me, but Ethan's response was surprisingly measured. "Thank you for telling me," he said quietly. "I need some time to process this." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "I'm sorry to be the one to tell you. You don't deserve this." He sighed. "Neither do you." The days leading up to the wedding were a blur. I avoided Lily as much as possible, and she, sensing my fury, kept her distance. Jake tried calling and texting, but I ignored him. My focus was on Ethan and what he planned to do. The morning of the wedding arrived, and the house was a flurry of activity. Lily was radiant in her wedding gown, a picture-perfect bride. But beneath her polished exterior, I could see the cracks, the furtive glances, the nervous fidgeting. She knew the truth was a ticking time bomb. The ceremony began without a hitch. Guests filled the pews of the small chapel, their faces alight with joy. Ethan stood at the altar, his expression unreadable. When Lily appeared at the end of the aisle, his eyes locked on hers, and for a moment, I wondered if he'd decided to go through with it despite everything. The officiant began, and the ceremony unfolded as expected until it came time for the vows. Ethan took Lily's hands in his voice steady as he spoke. "Lily, before I make my vows, there's something I need to say." A murmur rippled through the crowd, and Lily's smile faltered. "Ethan, what are you doing?" she whispered, panic flickering in her eyes. He ignored her, addressing the guests instead. "This week, I learned something that shook me to my core. I discovered that the person I was about to marry betrayed my trust in the worst possible way." Gasps filled the room, and Lily's face turned ashen. "Ethan, please," she begged, but he held up a hand to silence her. "I'm not saying this to embarrass anyone," he continued, his voice firm. "But I believe in honesty, and I can't start a marriage built on lies." He turned to Lily, his gaze piercing. "You cheated on me with your sister's boyfriend. I can't marry someone who would do that." The room erupted into chaos. Guests whispered furiously, and Lily's mother fainted. Ethan stepped away from the altar, leaving Lily standing there, her eyes brimming with tears. I watched from the sidelines, my emotions a whirlwind. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part ached for the sister I once adored. Despite everything, seeing her humiliated in front of everyone was painful. Ethan walked past me on his way out, pausing briefly. "Thank you for telling me," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. Then he was gone, leaving a stunned crowd and a broken bride behind. In the aftermath, the wedding was cancelled, and Lily disappeared from the public eye. Jake moved away, leaving no forwarding address, and I focused on rebuilding my life. It wasn't easy, but I found solace in the knowledge that I had done the right thing. Months later, Lily reached out, asking to meet. Reluctantly, I agreed. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavily between us. "I'm sorry," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "For everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say it." I studied her, searching for sincerity. "Why did you do it?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Was it worth destroying everything?" She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "No, it wasn't. I was selfish and stupid, and I've lost the two people who mattered most to me." Silence stretched between us before I finally spoke. "I'm not sure I can forgive you, Lily." "Not yet. But I hope you've learned something from this." She nodded, her expression one of deep regret. "I have. More than you know." As I walked away, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe one day, the wounds would heal, and our relationship could be mended. But for now, I was content to focus on myself, leaving the pain of the past behind. Several months later, fate intervened in an unexpected way. I met Ethan again, this time at a mutual friend's gathering. There was a moment of hesitation as our eyes met, but the tension quickly melted into a shared understanding. We spent the evening talking, discovering layers of connection we hadn't explored before. Our shared experiences had created an unspoken bond, and I found myself drawn to his kindness and strength. Over the weeks that followed, Ethan and I grew closer. He brought light into the dark corners of my heart, and I saw a future filled with hope rather than pain. Our first kiss was gentle and heartfelt, a moment of healing for both of us. It wasn't rushed or complicated. It was just right, like a promise of something beautiful to come. In the end, love has a way of surprising you. It creeps in when you least expect it, turning brokenness into something whole. Ethan and I became each other's safe haven, and while the scars of the past remained, they no longer defined us. Instead, they became a testament to our resilience and the love we had found in each other.